Welcome to Shifting from Grudge to Grit, Grace, and Gratitude. Jamila, I'm just going to press go live on Instagram, and so you can greet our audience in the meantime.
Yeah, thank you, Anissa. Welcome to Grit, Grace, and Gratitude. It's another Friday gone by. It's in a blink of an eye. It's unbelievable how quickly the time goes. And I suppose it's because we're all so busy in our lives, which is absolutely amazing and very grateful for that. But as Anissa and I have been chatting, we need to find the balance. Um, so, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever in the world you may be. We welcome you to our podcast today, and I do apologize for the background noise. But just to give you an idea, Anissa, I don't think you've seen this either, but just going to
No.
turn my camera around for a bit to let you
Yes.
see what really occupies my time.
Oh, you're at the paddle courts.
Yes.
Oh, my word.
So these are the
This is
paddle
your life. This is your life. Hey?
These are the paddle courts at Santon City, on the rooftop of Santon City, and these are the indoor courts. There's also 4 outdoor courts. And yeah, recently it's just been taking over my life, Anissa, to be honest.
But it's your, what do you want to call it? Your passion project, your baby. You love it.
It is my passion project. I do absolutely love it. But it blends so well, and there's such a beautiful synergy with the life coaching because it's all about that holistic balance of mind, body, and soul. And
Yes.
this is my way of making sure that I keep my body in shape and at its best. Um, and yeah, just along with that, coupled with that, comes the peace of mind, from having played a game that's, increasing all the good hormones and feel good.
Well, you put me to shame. You put me to shame, my darling, because I have seen of late you have been not only doing the paddle, you've gone into some sort of exercise regimen to test your strength and stamina. One moment, I've got our estate's garden service. I just want to close the window.
Sure. Yeah, so I feel that it's really important at any stage in your lives, but particularly when you hit your 50s, or 40s and your 50s, and you start to lose muscle mass. It's really important to start taking care of yourself, and you only have a short uh, window period where we have the ability to build muscle, which is going to actually benefit us when later on in our lives. So maybe share with us on the comments what are your exercise regimes that you partake in, and just share it so that we all have an idea of what's out there, what we can do. I know there's a lot of people who feel that, at a particular age, it's not your time anymore, or you've been there, done that. But I think that it's an ongoing, exercise and challenge for yourself. Same way that we challenge our mental health and space, I think that we need to equally take care of our bodies.
I couldn't agree more because I'm not doing as you are, as frequently as you are. I can see it impacting my sleep patterns. I can see it, my energy levels and my productivity output is, it's there, but I'm on autopilot. I'm not on my A game at the moment, right?
Yeah.
So I think you are right that there is a blend or a um sorry, I've just got our virtual assistant Marissa saying, yeah, that she may be late, our guest of today. So this is the challenge with time zone differences. We're always going to have that. But I think just to come back to your point, mind, body, soul, and spirit, it does require intentional action to say, well, sorry about this. Can you hear my noise in the background?
It's okay. Like we say, real and raw. That's how we
Real
present
life
ourselves.
happens. So I can feel it energetically because I asked the question the other day, would I hire myself in my business at the stage of where I am right now? And if I have to be brutally honest, it would be an explicit no. And why? Why is that? Because I'm just doing the bare minimum. I'm doing stuff, I'm getting through things. I am prioritizing to some extent, but can I do more? Hell yeah, I can do more. Because I was reflecting on when I was an employee in the corporate world. Who was I then? How did I show up then? And I showed up with, and I mean, it's kind of, we are talking about pivoting today. So I think it's good that we're going here. But I found that in a corporate space, there's those KPIs or your OKRs, and you work to those and you go above and beyond. You first in and you last out. And yes, I am giving myself grace because I am a single mom of three and running a business that I need to, start to scratch and grow again. But if the mind, body, soul, that holistic health and well-being was there, I think I would have been at the top of my game. I would have been in my zone of genius and my flow state even more than what I am when I am serving my clients or when I am trying to secure new opportunities. So it does play a role. It does.
No, absolutely, I agree with you, Anissa. But just to answer that question, you know what, as to whether I would hire you for sure. Um, but I think it's very important that that we do challenge ourselves constantly in all aspects of our lives. But I think it's also important for us to be kind to ourselves too, um, and not just continue on that hamster wheel, which we fall into quite easily. I think many times within our lives, um, in our lives. But like you say, when one aspect impacts the other for sure. And it has a domino effect on the other. So if you are in a healthy space in your in say, let's just say, the way that you're eating, it would encourage you to work out a little bit more, and vice versa. And in that, again, I told you, it helps you to maybe get up early in the mornings, start your day on a positive note where you are feeling empowered and motivated and inspired to take on as much as you can. But I think the wonderful thing about being in the space of being your own boss and having your own business is that you do push yourself. And maybe I think you're looking at that version of yourself when you were an employee from a different perspective now. There's so much that's on your plate, there's so many responsibilities, and at the end of the day, you are getting it done. All onus, all responsibilities on your shoulders. And so far, from my knowledge, I don't think you've let any balls get away from you as yet. So I
Okay,
think be
so you're just being very gracious, but I'm gonna accept and receive it because yes, I'm not saying I'm not juggling the balls. What I'm saying, imagine what is possible if the health and well-being aspects were taken care of. And every single time I'm in gratitude and I say to myself, I thank the Almighty and I say, oh, geez, I have not been taking care of my vessel in the way that I should be from a diet, from an exercise, not even some of the practices that I would generally have done in the past. And I'm not talking about rigid practices like only meditation and breath work, the walks to the beach, the stuff that grounds me, being in nature, and I thank the Almighty for that because I'm still being able to serve. I'm still being able to hold those different balls up in the air and deliver. But I was
yeah,
asking myself that question around would I employ myself simply because one has to have that really honest conversation because if you want to grow and scale your business, it requires a different version of you. If you want to pivot in the business, we're talking about pivoting today, and so even, I mean, just so that those that do know, we are waiting for our guest to join us, Dr. Letitia Wright. So we pray that she does because she's a very dynamic guest, and we really want her to be on here. I'm not going to read her bio, but what I will say is that we are talking about when the door closes, it's not the end of all rejection, it's a redirection. And we're going to dive into mastering the art of the pivot and what to do when the door closes, but your calling evolves. So for me, it's apt because the door closed for me in terms of being retrenched, laid off. There was a restructure, and I was celebrating it at the time, but I also had my own fears, and I was a different version of myself back then. And to try and start a business at a version of yourself where you weren't yet where you need to be, but you also not you weren't not at the right place to actually start either. So I found that kind of gave me sort of like the oomph, the like make it happen. And now I'm sitting where, as you know, and we talked about this the last time with my one largest retainer ending last year, and I'm back to the building blocks of growing my business and taking the hard lessons of what worked, what didn't work, what do I need to do more of or less of, and what is something new. So that's the pivot, right? And what does it mean if that door closed on that larger contract? Does it mean I need to do exactly the same mistake and take another large contract or find something that's going to give me that comfort zone? Or this version of myself is saying, well, if I have to scale, what does that version need to become? So that version is what you're doing now, that holistic wellness and well-being, because then I will be more energized to be on top of my game. So that's really where I was coming from, not shaming or guilting myself.
Absolutely, I know that for sure. The thing is, I think that when you do find that passion and that purpose, and this is really, really what you're meant to be doing, um, we always have doubts in our mind as to whether this is actually something that you should be pursuing, whether you should give up what you have currently to spend more time and focus on that and really take it seriously. And you're often riddled with a lot of doubt, but you can push it and push it for only so long until the universe makes the decision for you. And that's normally when you find that the doors are closing. But it's actually just redirecting you and making the decision for you to push you in that direction. And so that you begin when you have no other option but to do what you need to do. So I think everything happens in life in its stages and it unfolds as it's meant to unfold. Um, but when you do get to that space and you surrender to it, and you surrender to the pleasure of actually having that gift, of being able to pursue your passion, it falls into place almost seamlessly, Anisa. And I was riddled for many years with, oh my God, I was so worried. Am I going to make this project work? Am I going to be granted this tender? Is this going to happen? All these questions, all the self-doubt. And until I finally found what it is that I actually loved doing and became so engrossed in the passion and pleasure that it brought you, that you don't focus on how is this going to happen, or how is it, just naturally falls into place for you. And that's really a beautiful space to be in.
Yeah, I agree with you. And you get to a certain level of truth, but it requires awareness, and it requires a letting go of the previous version that was sitting with those conditioned beliefs of not being good enough or not worthy enough, or feeling like you don't belong in certain spaces or places, and it goes back to our childhoods all the time, because that narratives that were formed, or the stories that we told us ourselves, is not just we fabricated it and it just came up and we living according to those stories. No, it was our lived experiences. And I feel that if it wasn't for those lived experiences, we don't get to move to the next level. And I'm not saying we must be chasing and hustling to get to the top, because success means different things for different people. I mean, when somebody said to me yesterday, because I'm in skills development now as well, right? And she said, and I said to her, it's a full circle moment, because before my daughter was born, I was facilitating leadership and self development for a semester because I was pregnant with her. And I loved it. I loved being in a classroom environment, facilitating, lecturing. It was something that brought me joy. And I always vowed I wanted to get back into it again. But it's what you just said earlier on, when you no longer focus on that intense desire and need to acquire, to accomplish, to move to the next stage of your life, and you just stay in your truth and live according to your values, it comes towards you. And, even though I'm a little bit out of my depth in certain things of the program where I'm now, like, designing the day of the learning for the students, and it's all online. So I've got to get even more creative. So the, the rejection, it's not even a rejection, the closure of a chapter of that large contract that I had pushed me to pivot. And I'm still needing to pivot even more right now to say, okay, who am I meant to be? I can go back into corporate and can find a job again. I feel I'm quite employable. I have the right skills. But I think in terms of, we know there are the determining factors, our age, and your race plays a role in this day and age of who gets employed. Do I want to go and do that? No. Somebody said to me, why don't you just take a comfortable job again? You've got all this responsibility. And I said, absolutely not, because every single disappointment, lesson, not so great experience, loss, or the grief that I experience will be in vain, because it's those things that are pushing me to say, well, how do I become a better version of myself? As long as I'm not hustling, but I'm doing it because it's now more purposeful. And it's the legacy that I want to cultivate and leave behind, right?
Absolutely, Anissa, and it takes a very high degree of bravery and courage to be able to make that decision, and to stand true to what your ideals and your values are and the choices that you have made, um, in celebration of that passion and making sure that you live it to the best of your ability. But I want to just focus a little bit on your point about, our view of success and the awareness of that. And I think that it evolves and it changes, and as we change in our lives, it reinvents itself in many different ways as we reinvent ourselves. So, in as much as it sounds like a beautiful fairy tale when I say that it's amazing to find your passion and how everything falls into place, da 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 da, it doesn't mean that the realities or the challenges are just conveniently removed. No, it's not that case, but you find a way of being able to handle it and receive it much better than you would have at any other point in your life. But something that's really, really important as well, to ensure that you remain on that path, is making sure that you have the right people around you, because on those days when you are feeling down, and that's, without a doubt it will come, where you might feel a little bit uncertain of yourself, where you that self-doubt creeps in, or like we were just speaking, you procrastinate certain things, and then you feel like, this the walls are falling in on you. And that's when you need those people around you who are there to pull you back up again, to encourage you, remotivate you, and to fuel that belief that you have in yourself. So I think that's really, really important. And this is what I was speaking about a couple of weeks ago when I said, it's really important for us to have a conversation about friendships and adult friendships in your life. Because just
Yes.
as the friendships are so important in your childhood because it shapes who you are, I think it's equally, if not even more important, of who you have in your space around you. And so to speak, in the words of, I think it was Simon Sinek, is who are those people that'll sit in the mud with you?
And we find on this journey of our growing and scaling or expansion or evolution, whatever word you want to use for it, is that you discover who you thought might be sitting in the mud with you doesn't. And we grieve that. And it's okay to grieve it, but I think it's a gift to be able to see as you are now moving to the next level of consciousness or the next level of your growth in your journey, who's willing to celebrate alongside you and who's willing, as you say, to sit in the mud, to when the times get tough and everything that you've put in is not immediately translating. Who are those individuals? They are few and far between, unfortunately. But I'm comfortable with that because I've had to also learn, where am I codependent and where do I have expectations? What are my attachments? So the growth journey can become quite lonely. So it's quite a salient point to make that you need to know who your tribe is and find your tribe, because there are going to be moments of isolation. There are going to be moments of procrastination. The procrastination being linked to perfectionism. How is this? That's me. How is this going to come across? Is it the right format? Does it read well? Is it going to be received well? That's past stuff that will always reemerge. But the reality is that we'll never not have those parts of ourselves, those saboteurs or sabotaging ways of ourselves or our shadow sides. How do we then make sure that we accept that it will show up, Jamila? I mean, we said we'll explore today how to embrace life's unexpected detours, what it takes to pivot without losing your purpose, and how growth, clarity, and a higher calling often emerge after rejection or loss. When you're at that crossroads and you're thinking, what now? Have you got any examples of any closed doors and how you navigated that?
Yeah, I mean, like, I've been through this many times in my life before, and I'm sure I might go through it a couple more times because I think at the root of or the solution lies in the root of truly knowing thyself. And think a lot of the discomfort and insecurities and self doubt and imposter syndrome and people pleasing, all of that stems from us really not truly knowing ourselves, not celebrating who we are, and also taking for granted about the uh, the 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 divine within ourselves, and what a beautiful special miracle each one of us is by being uniquely ourselves. And I think it's when you start to learn that about yourself, when you create that awareness for yourself, that's when you start to iron out all the bumps and the seams and the little potholes that you might go through. That's the solution, I feel, which gives you some sort of clarity, which allows you to let go of quantity and rather focus on the quality of the people that are around you, to be peaceful and happy with that. I feel, and I've always said this to my son, have a few quality people in your space rather than wanting to be loved by all. It makes
Yeah,
such a
I think,
huge difference. Yeah,
yeah,
because I mean,
it does. It
yeah,
does.
it does make a huge difference, and that can only be done if you are confident within who you are yourself.
Yeah, I think it's Les Brown that says OQP. I remember this from your only quality people. And then Ashif says there, sometimes when your circle decreases in size, it increases in value. Absolutely, yes. you know. And coming back to your point about knowing thyself, you know, I sent another guy a message, not a message, a video yesterday around on it was a YouTube thing, and I want to see what the caption said again. It's a bit provocative, but I will put it there. When a woman lives without intimacy, I won't use the actual word, given that we are on a public, but sex, it is sex, intimacy, let's call it what it is. This is what happens. And this, I listened to it, and people think that women become lonely when their relationships end or when they have to go through a divorce. And yes, being widowed is a different experience, a different level of grief. But what actually happens in the solace, in the quietness, in the being aloneness, you get to rediscover yourself. And you get to discover also where you were in your wounded state. Because when that relationship ended, when that door closed, you needed to decide. And there are many women that I know of. And if you are listening to this today, please, I'm no relationship expert, but the one thing I do know is if you go from one relationship as one ended to another, you're just trying to fill a void, right? And you're not whole within yourself enough to know that you need to fulfill those parts of yourself by your own level of love that you have for yourself, your own admiration that you have for yourself. So, pivoting in that context, I know it's digressing of the professional lives and we're going into relationships, but whether it is a loss of a friendship or you estrange from family because those relationships are no longer serving you, if you go back for more, I almost want to call it more toxicity. You perpetuating that cycle because your level of healing hasn't happened enough for you to love yourself and accept yourself enough. So what you are doing is you're accepting toxicity, whether it is a work relationship even. So I feel that that healing aspect is so underrated, and it's critical to know that when you are ready for your next relationship, you know what your non-negotiables are and what you are not going to compromise. And again, it's not just a romantic relationship, whether it's a work relationship, a business partnership, whether it's your siblings or extended family. We have to be very clear on who we are and have healed and know ourselves well enough to say, these are the boundaries.
100% Anissa, I agree with you totally on that one. But just on your point about us being speaking about more professional stuff and all of that, I think that, really this platform, like we said, we wanted to come here, show up real and raw, and whether you're talking about intimacy or sex or whatever it may be, I think that we are multidimensional beings, and it's so important for us to come onto this platform and to open up the conversations, not just on, spiritual self and but just to start speaking about the realities of us as human beings and the experiences that we are having, whether it's in a romantic relationship, whether it's about menopause, whether it's about divorce, whether it doesn't matter what it is, but really this is the space where we should be speaking about these things, because not everybody has the luxury of having a best friend or even a circle, to be able to bounce these issues and insecurities and questions that we might have. And that's literally why we wanted to create this space, is to be able to have these open, real, raw conversations, about what we experience as human beings in the day-to-day life that we are living. um, And on the point of relationships, I think, yes, you have to do the work. You have to be aware of and acknowledge that you have a shadow self. Everything isn't just about things working out in life, it's about getting to know who you are holistically, good, bad, ugly, whatever the case may be. And being comfortable with that, being comfortable with it, but learning tools as well on how to improve yourself from a mind, body, and soul perspective. Um, with relationships, also, Anissa, I think that every relationship comes your way to teach you the lessons that we chose to learn as we came into this world. Um, I spoke to a friend of mine. I'm not sure if you told me this, Anissa, but I spoke to a friend of mine, and she was telling me either of her experience or whether she had seen something on a clip. But this little boy who was 5 years old was having this conversation with his mom. And he said, "Mom, I chose you." And so she said, "What do you mean, son?" And he said, "No, I was on this level and there were all these different flights of stairs and all the parents were waiting, the mums and the dads were waiting. And I saw you and I chose you." And she thought this is so strange of this child to have said to her. But that is the reality. It's something that I truly believe is souls. We choose our parents and we choose the lessons that we want to learn in the lifetime that we are given. And he went on to say, she asked him, "Where were you?" And he said, "I was in heaven." And this is, and I thought that was so beautiful, um, because I truly believe that. And I truly believe that every experience that we go through is to get us to that higher self. And to get to that higher self, we have to be open to learn the lessons. And to learn the lessons, we have to be open to the experiences. And we may not get it right the first time around. Sometimes it keeps on coming back, and the same scenario gets experienced over and over again until we do learn those lessons. So it's important also, like within relationships, and I'm guilty of doing this, but I mean, I've just come to this realization that I will never say that this relationship was a waste of my time or this person should not have come into my life. No, there's a reason for every purpose, every person who comes into your life, for every experience that you have, to improve yourself and to get you to that higher self. So, yeah, I don't know.
You
I mean,
know,
it's just made me look at relationships and experiences from a different perspective,
yeah.
in looking at how it benefits me rather than how it doesn't.
Yeah, but that takes an inner wisdom, and it takes tapping into a part of yourself that says, you know what, I see the gift and the opportunity in this not so great relationships to elevate me to the next level in my life. I see how I've played the toxic role in the relationship too, because we are always assuming that it's the other person or the circumstance or the experience or the event. And that in and of itself is an opportunity. But I absolutely love what you said earlier on about the 5-year-old boy and how, he chose his mom. And I look at my life, in terms of what I'm a product of and how I was born and being born out of sin, so to speak. And then how that relationship with my mom was initially estranged, but has become so strong, and how that experience has shaped how I raise my own kids today. So we are meant to be breaking generational cycles and curses. I'm going to call it what it is, because the reality is somebody needs to take that step. And when you do take that step, you are the crazy one in the family. You are the one that is not willing to accept the status quo around what's going on. And so it's frowned upon because if you have a family that or relationships that, they don't handle conflict well, so everything gets swept under the carpet and nothing ever gets raised to the surface, or no courageous conversations happen, get out. Where whatever the context is, because break the cycle. And it's tough being the cycle breaker because you will face periods of isolation that potentially becomes indefinite. And it's not always new people, it's often the ones that are near and dear, perceived to be near and dear to us on how we saw them in our lives. And then they don't necessarily support the challenging, the willingness to say, no, this isn't working for me. Ashif, I agree with you. Yes, love and find yourself until you are ready to love. Time out. Yes, because then you are loving from an empowered position, not a disempowered, wounded space.
And I think,
Jamila,
loving yourself comes from a different level of love when you have self love. Because the experience is completely different when you have self love. The what your non-negotiables um, are totally different to when you are insecure about yourself. You will always make sure that you place yourself first, and it's not something that's selfish. I think it's something that comes from a space of self worth and self actualization, and a powerful space, which is no dissimilar to when you're on an aeroplane, and the masks come down. You got to put it on yourself first for you to be worthy to be of assistance to anyone else. And I think it's so important for us to acknowledge and to see that as a gift to ourselves. Also, I think then it allows you to never ever be a victim again, because up until that, we feel that life has been so unfair on us. I'm always the one that has the difficult route to follow. Nothing ever works out for ourselves, but we never ourselves as to what our responsibility was in that scenario. And it's important to ask those questions of yourself and to take accountability. I think self accountability is so important, and so few of us um, are brave enough to do it. Are brave enough to say, okay, these are my limitations in this aspect. This is where I've not made the right decisions. This is where I've gone wrong. And you know what? It's okay. I think the success comes in the understanding and realization of those limitations we find within ourselves. And from there is the only way that you can assess it and how it's affecting your life, so that you are able to put a plan of action into place to change that. The thing is that we will continue to go in these cycles because we are ever evolving, and we are never ever going to remain the same in our lives, which is an absolutely wonderful thing, because as being these multifaceted individuals and beings, it means that you will continue to evolve. You will continue to redefine yourself. You will continue to improve on who you are and learn about the extreme capacity that you have for change, and the power that we have to be able to do something with that change. So, I mean, Anissa, I don't know about you, but as I'm getting into my 50s, I'm finding that understanding. I'm finding and I'm questioning myself about what is it that I am holding on to too tightly about myself, and how can I let go of that to be able to evolve and to absorb more experiences, more ways to view myself so that I can become better. I don't know in your
Jamila, I
40s
don't know if my
if that's the case
can
with
you
you.
hear me at all? Because
I can hear you perfectly, Anissa.
tell me, do you hear me perfectly? Because there's quite an echo. Ashif, if you are still there, when Jamila was speaking, could you hear her? Because I just want to determine if it's a signal on my side. I started off with very poor Wi-Fi connectivity, and you were breaking up every second word, but I could hear the gist of what you were saying, Jamila. And I see Marissa's on Instagram. Let us know if you could hear clearly from Jamila's side, or and if it's just on my side that there's a challenge. But yes, to answer your question, Jamila, I hope you can. Can you hear me, Jamila? You're frozen. Okay, so I'm just trying to determine where the connectivity challenges are. Um, I will be back shortly. How's it, Jamila? I'm back. Can you hear me? The strangest thing is happening, people.
Okay,
Technology is
I was
playing
mute.
crazy jokes on me. Jamila,
Can you hear me?
hey, I can hear you now. But for the most
Okay.
part, my screen was showing you are frozen, and I'm
No,
not
I
hearing a word
think
coming through on audio.
everyone's been able to hear us and see us both. I think maybe the connections, I don't understand why it's just between you and I. But I've had no interruptions of you from this end at all.
Okay, so you can hear me if I continue talking.
Perfectly.
Okay, so it's so difficult to hear anything that you're saying right now, but just to respond to what you said earlier on, yes, as I am, whether it's in my 40s and you in your 50s, remember we growing and expanding and like going through things at different stages of our lives, but it's also an invitation. And so until we accept the invitation and you heed that call, as they call it in the hero's journey to adventure, you may very well stagnate and stay in the same space for years to come. And there are many people that do that. You know, they've been faced with a rejection and they end up repeating the cycle, as Jamila said. And I've been there, you know, and in fact, Sumaya, that was on last week, said sometimes we tend to repeat certain patterns of behavior that has been there, remnant of the past. So whether it's bad habits or overcompensating or pleasing, some of those does rear its ugly head for me. But it's like you said, the pertinent question: what are the parts of yourself that you need to leave behind? Now, I have no idea if anyone heard that because the time is ticking. You are frozen, Jamila. I think we may have to end our lives sooner simply because I am not able to communicate and engage with you. Let me send you a message.
Okay, everyone. I
For
hope that
those that
you
are here with us,
I hope that you guys can hear Anisa. I heard every word. And it's just such an important topic. And just to read out what Ashif has had to say, the two most powerful warriors are patience and time. And this is by Leo Tolstoy, Process of Wisdom. Absolutely, patience and time. And you know that in any aspect of your life, those two are the standouts, and they would help you to get out on the other side. A lot of the time, we get into the space where we feel panicked and where we think that, like I said earlier on, that the walls are closing in on us. But if we are able to remain calm, stay in the present moment, allow ourselves to put that patience into practice and give ourselves the time, there's nothing that we cannot accomplish. There's nothing that is impossible for us to do. So, Anisa, let me see what you have to say. Okay, it seems as if I'm frozen on Anisa's end. I hope that I'm not frozen on you, everyone else's side. But maybe, Anisa, I think that we should um, call it at 10 minutes
we
early.
should end. We should end. Yes, we're going to end early because it is painful. I cannot hear. I hear every second, maybe third word, and the fact that you are frozen on my side is distracting. Yes, you are gorgeous, even though you're frozen. But no, I don't think I'm going to continue the live. We only have a few minutes left. You know, maybe third time lucky, we'll discover having a beautiful conversation with Dr. Letitia Wright. I'm not sure what has happened on her side. Our virtual assistant said Jamila isn't frozen to the broader audience, but to me, she is. So, on that note, thank you for joining us. We will see you again, same time next week. And, you know, for those that have seen our request for joining our live stream, believe it or not, we are almost fully booked up until the end of the year. And we are so grateful to Marissa for her support in, you know, finding the right audience for us and quality guests and powerful conversations. And I'm just grateful Jamila was here today so we could at least have some conversation in the absence of our amazing guest. Jamila, anything from your side before we say goodbye? Anything from you, Jamila? Okay, so I think we're going to end it because Jamila's probably not able to hear me. I'll message her privately. Okay, any last minute comments for our audience? Let's see if she responds to that, even though I can't hear her. Okay, let's see what she says. Ashif, thank you for staying with us in the craziness. Okay, and Jamila says she has shared. So I will end the stream from here on out and look forward to see you again same time next week. Have a wonderful weekend. Take care. Bye.